cold open question to open this edition of the Just Basketball Show, Brendon Kleen. This week, Caitlin Clark, you might have heard of her, passed 3,000 career points. Lil Wayne, yes, the only Lil Wayne that we care about, Young Money, a Millie, the run of mixtapes, that's incredible, goes on Twitter and sends not just one, but 2 tweets congratulating her on 3K and called her a fucking dog. D with 2 G's, okay?
Yeah.
So, that's cool in itself, but I ask you this question, Brendon Kleen. If you did something cool, you got a promotion at work, got a pay raise, we get a bajillion downloads on this podcast, whatever it is, and you got to pick a celebrity, any celebrity to send you a really just wild social media congratulations message, who do you want? Who would make your day in that case?
This is going to feel like a callback to our last episode where I was donning an Uncut Gems t-shirt, but it is not a bit or a gag. I truly love Adam Sandler, and so it would be him. There also, very timely, is a clip going around of him playing Lover with his daughter by Taylor Swift on the most recent tour. The biggest fanboy of anybody that he ever has come across. If you see Henry Winkler getting love for Barry or Kathy Bates getting an Oscar nomination a few years ago, he posts the most sincere shit I've ever seen of any celebrity on his Instagram every time any of his friends and family do anything cool. And so I love him. I'm a big fan, but also it seems like it would be better than fucking dog. If it was Adam Sandler, and it would be like 3 paragraphs of a huge love letter for the world to see. So that's my pick.
I don't know. I kind of really like getting called dog by Lil Wayne. I feel like that's just how Lil Wayne tweets, and that's how he tweets.
Yeah,
about, like,
no, it's endearing. I'm not taking anything away from Caitlin Clark, but my pick would be a little different. It's all right.
I have 2 because I'm going to cheat here. Number 1, Paul Mescal, just like my sad boy Irish actor King. Just give me whatever that would be. I feel like it would just be really earnest. To your point, I just want something earnest and real.
Okay. You're not going to care about him in like 20 years, and that won't be cool. But I love your answer anyway.
Brendon, that's not true. Paul Mescal,
okay.
I own season tickets. After Sun, you kidding me?
Sure. Yeah.
All These Strangers, can't wait. That's my guy. That's just my guy.
Who's the Paul Mescal of 1992, and do you know who that is anymore?
No, I was born in 1993, so no, I'm not that old. I may be bald, but I'm not that old.
All right. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is in the music sense, and it's just because I find everything he does to be very funny, and like there's my favorite Twitter account is related to accidental bars of this man, and that is Action Bronson. No one gasses up his friends quite like Action Bronson. And I just want Action Bronson, as he's like doing his health stuff now, like swinging a big metal mace around his head, to be like, my guy Chris, and just get amped. I just want some Bronson in my life. I feel like I would just feel like a good positive energy coming out of Action Bronson.
That's the much better pick. Let's talk NBA Cup.
All right, coming up next, NBA Cup, Lakers-Pacers final. We're going to predict it. All right, here we are, Just Basketball Show. I'm Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. This is your twice weekly podcast and show on YouTube covering things NBA, WNBA, women's college basketball, men's college basketball when it pertains. This Sunday, we're going to have our show up right after the WNBA lottery. So we'll have that, and we'll have a recap up of the NBA Cup final, which is a Saturday night tip, which I'm very much looking forward to. We're going to talk today also specifically about Bucks-Pacers, and then we're going to talk about Lakers-Pelicans, and then look ahead to the final. But got to tell you first about our friends at Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy is a player prop DFS platform where you can pick more or less on your favorite players across multiple sports, including the NBA and NFL. Sign up today with code JustBasketball, and Thrive will match your first deposit up to $250. Brendon, let's start with Bucks Pacers. Pacers have made it to the finals. Tyrese Haliburton, the star of this NBA Cup run. Again, another game with 0 turnovers. Again, where he made big shots. He has just flat out arrived. This is a super duper star now. He is in elite category. There's a graphic going around of other guards who have posted, who have had double-digit assists, 0 turnover games, and it's some of the best guys to ever play the point guard position. This is just a dude And this tournament, I think that the storyline of this, that he, A, kind of carried this game for Indiana in a lot of ways, and B, he's just arrived now. And for him to get his name in these big buckets called by Mike Breen to beat Giannis in that moment, it always felt right.
He's made this entire tournament. He's made, I mean, honestly, kind of the story of the first quarter of this NBA season, I think. And they couldn't guard him. They could not guard him. They tried every assortment of coverages. Their transition defense is Swiss cheese. Milwaukee seemed to be realizing in real time what we all have known about them, which is that they have absolutely 0 point of attack defenders. I'm not quite sure why Andre Jackson Jr. did not see the court. We'll talk about, I think, the Bucks offense and how it contributed to their defensive issues, in my opinion, Chris. But from Tyrese Haliburton's standpoint, I think, to me, what was going through my mind last night watching this game is our conversations as we went team by team through our season previews. We debated a lot between Haliburton and some of these other young point guards as we got to the Thunder or the Pistons or the Hawks or the Cavs or the Hornets. And I feel like, constantly came back to comparing Haliburton to those guys. What's different? What makes him special? Why is he better? Why is his team in Indiana just soared since he got there, and he seems independent from whoever his teammates are, able to just rise to a level that we saw on both Monday and Thursday nights now in this NBA Cup, and probably on Saturday night, even if they aren't able to win it. And it's a few things to me, but it is the control, I feel like. I feel like it's the control. I feel like it is the unpredictability. I feel like it is the creativity. The dude is an artist playing basketball, and I'm so glad that a national audience, literally, they had one national TV game, they earned themselves 3 more, is finally getting to see this guy and appreciate him, and that he's doing these historic things that you mentioned, 15 assists, 0 turnovers, double-digit assists, 0 turnovers, all these records that he's compiling, because he's absolutely at the top of that list. Like, there's no more doubting that Haliburton is the best young point guard in the league, one of the best offensive engines in the NBA, period, and that this team and him are not going away anytime soon.
I have him. I agree. He's above Trey for me. He's above LaMelo. He's above Garland, who's had a really rough year so far. Fox has been amazing this year, and I would have him above Fox. Cade has been, I think, pretty disappointing. He's well above Cade. SGA is the one that I think is like, I think it depends on your flavor, and I think the momentum this year has been Hallie, but like Shea is.
And it kind of depends. Yeah, exactly. They're different players, right? It's like I don't even know what to call Shea a lot of the time, because it's like he's just this one-man scoring wrecking ball. It doesn't always feel like he's even playing point guard. Everybody on their team is kind of a point guard, so yeah, they're neck and neck probably. I think the Trey one is the interesting one, and I was thinking a lot about Trey last night. I made a TikTok for our feed and brought up Trey, and it kind of felt like I was just, why am I picking on Trey Young? But it's because Trey Young was thought to be, and the comps were thrown around often, and he's a little older, of Steve Nash, right? And what Tyrese Haliburton is what we thought Trey Young was going to be. Let me just, I'll say it that way. What Tyrese Haliburton is able to do with a live dribble is why he's impossible to defend. I was watching that step back 3 on the left wing over Brook Lopez to win the game, and I was like, people were making fun of his jumper. It's not that pretty. The way he creates space is like the opposite of when James Harden was at his peak, like breaking Wesley Johnson's ankles and all that stuff. There's a lot that's beautiful about Tyrese Haliburton's game, but his scoring is not it, and he doesn't get to the basket and dunk on your head like some guys will, or De'Aaron Fox's electric speed. It's that you never know what he's going to do, right? And there was a pass in the second quarter that I was just watching back before we hit record, where he goes to the basket, and it's like an underhand scoop pass all the way to the other side of the court for an Obi Toppin 3. He can get to that step back. He was driving pretty aggressively in that first half especially, and he can finish. And so it's that and the willingness to pass. I think he makes 72 passes per game, which is just crazy. And that you just, when you're watching him, you never have a clue what's going to happen next as a viewer, but also as a defender. And Trey was supposed to be that. Trey is often that, but a lot of the time his goal is to get to the free throw line. And the way that Tyrese has full control over everything, you could throw Jokic in there, use the Nash comparison, even use a LeBron comparison. That level of high IQ brilliance is what sets him apart, and I think that's what we're watching. And then obviously the skill development along the way to be better as a scorer has helped, but I don't know what you do to stop this guy. I don't think Milwaukee did either.
No, I don't think anybody does. I think we see that with how good Indiana's offense has been this year, and I think him and SGA is it could come down to what you prefer. Do you prefer some of the improvisation of Hallie and the creativity and the pace he wants to play at? Do you prefer some of a little more old school, frankly, methodical, mid-rangey energy? But they're both really big. They both use their size, I think, in really unique ways. I mean, Haliburton had a pass in this game, Brendan, that if you watch it in real time, it is exciting because Obi Toppin dunks, and that is enough. But he is got this height at half court where he can see everything, and he's got his head up at all times, and he puts it on a dot to Toppin, and it's just like a simple push ahead pass. But because he's so tall and because he can see ahead and the pace he's comfortable playing at, which not everyone wants to play that fast or is good at operating at that speed. There's very few guys that can do it like that. It unlocks other things that just makes something out of nothing. You have a note in our situation. Is the play slower thing about the Bucks, or is that about the Pacers?
The Bucks.
Okay, never mind. Disregard what I was going to say. The other thing about Haliburton, and we've hit on this a little.
No, the Indiana Pacers should absolutely not play any slower.
Yeah.
But here's a good comparison to what you're talking about, because I think the height is the distinguishing thing. Because out of the list of guys we just put in there, the ones we've been talking about as we previewed the season, I actually think Garland plays the most similarly to Haliburton. The difference is that Darius Garland's like 6'1", and Tyrese Haliburton is 6'7". And so some of the stuff that they're able to do playing fast, the vision that he has, the way that he's able to read the defense, find teammates, make everybody better, it does just come down to how big he is. And imagine if Steve Nash was that big, right? Imagine if even Trae Young was that big. I'm sure he would play the game a little bit differently. That's part of why LeBron and Jokic and even Luka Doncic and some of these other guys who are at that level as offensive creators are able to do it. It helps to be able to see over the defense. It's the same thing with Russell Wilson or Kyler Murray in the NFL. Like, sometimes it's just about how high are your eyeballs? How high are your arms when you pass the ball? Like, it is physical sometimes, but I think Haliburton's combination of all of it and his ability to use all that stuff is what makes him special. I mentioned scoring inside. He was, I'm counting the dots on the shot chart right now, 7, 8 of 9 inside the paint last night. That's not something you usually get from him, and that really stood out to me too, to kind of complete the package and make him pretty damn near unguardable. We'll talk, I guess, as we finish out the show about how the Lakers try to stop him, but I don't want to run out of things to say about this guy, but it's just so routine at this point that it's insane.
He's unbelievable. One other name we should shout out on this team. He's going to come up later, so I think we can talk about him a little bit more deeper in the show. But Aaron Nesmith, number one, Indiana, whatever they've done to help develop him and whatever he's done for himself to develop after Boston just did not work for him is amazing. There's something to be learned that maybe if it's the right situation, you can take a chance on a former lottery guy with the right intangibles and you figure it out and he blossoms. This guy was uber competitive in this game, uber physical in this game. He's been such a revelation for them. He was good last year, and Caitlin Cooper, when we had her on to preview the Pacers, really talked him up. But I've come away, Brennan, just so impressed with him, and you have some numbers here about how he guarded Giannis. For him to do that, and for the Pacers as a whole to do just enough defensively to get this game under control, particularly after they got really romped on defense in the third quarter of this game. Awesome. This is just a team growing up and understanding what it takes to win right in front of us, and Nesmith is absolutely a big part of that.
Yeah, Nesmith, I think he was actually fine in Boston. I think that, they traded him in the Brogdon deal, so I think he was paid on an extension. I think he's making like $7 million. I just think some guys take a little longer. He's 24, and he's a little small for how he plays. I mean, even guarding Giannis, he's giving up a lot of size. He's listed at 6'5". I think that it's just going to be a specific role on a specific team. And I think from a offensive standpoint, hey, go catch and shoot threes off of feeds from Tyrese Haliburton's a pretty nice role. We heard from Woj that Tyrese is, already broadcasting, look how fun I am to play with. Like, come do it with me here in Indiana. And Nesmith is benefiting there. But defensively, it's just about effort and strength and physicality. And I think he brought that in a much needed way. I mean, the thing is with Indiana's defense, right, is like literally one or two more stops can lower your defensive rating by a point or two, right? Like it really does come down to that when you're looking at the stats or anything else. When this game ended up being a 9-point win for the Pacers, but it was pretty neck and neck throughout. The Bucks have scored 44 points in 47 possessions. This is across both games, including the regular season one that was also pretty close. 44 points in 47 possessions when Nesmith guards Giannis. Giannis has just 2 assists, and he has 2 turnovers in those possessions. And Nesmith has only fouled him 3 times. So Giannis is like 8 of 9 from the field and 7 of 8 from the free throw line. He's scoring whenever he wants. The first possession of the game that Nesmith checked Giannis kind of wasn't ready for it, missed a layup, missed kind of like a bunny layup thing. They get it right back to him, and he just smashes Nesmith. Like, you can't guard me. But, again, it's just enough fight without fouling and physicality to make Giannis take a few more seconds off the shot clock, give the ball up and reset the post up, pass it out rather than trying to score. And you're just shaving points here and there. And that's the stuff we've been talking about with the Pacers defense all season. So I think they've found a permanent rotation player in Aaron Nesmith. I think he should be playing every night for them.
100%. I mean, he is kind of filling the role that Benedict Mathurin maybe quite hasn't grown into yet at this point. That's kind of how I look at it to some degree. Mathurin is someone I still really like. I like that he's getting run in these big minutes because I think it will be good for him to play in meaningful moments and play in big stages and kind of go through some of that. But I think it's good that they have someone that can actually kind of fill that role more readily right now. I think that does them a real solid to have someone like that and just have someone that no matter what comes next for the team, like Nesmith is the kind of guy you can just keep. Like, that's exactly the kind of guy your team can take on a bunch of different shapes. You can move in different directions, whatever it's going to look like. That guy fits in basically every circumstance. It's the kind of, like, template of a player that teams give up, like, first-round picks for to fill out needs in their rotation when they're making title pushes. Like, that's the kind of guy you just have now, and that's a real big boon for them. Let's hit on the Bucks a little bit before we go onto Lakers-Pelicans. Number 1, Brendan, I just do love the world because of the Damian Lillard connections to Chris Haynes and the Giannis Antetokounmpo connections to Chris Haynes. That, like, we just get, like, Eric Neem does a great job for The Athletic on a beat day-to-day, but when there's, like, a big thing that someone clearly wanted out there, there's just pipelines right to Chris Haynes. So we get this note from him that Bobby Portis called out people in the locker room, including head coach Adrian Griffin and a lot of the younger guys on the team, that they needed to be more that Griffin needed to be more aggressive, that the team needed to be more competitive. All of these different things that I think are very valid concerns to some degree. But it's just funny how fast we got it and like how dramatic it felt, considering we kind of know the Bucks are a flawed team that are still winning lots of games right now.
He specifically said that they need to be more organized with their offense down the stretch of games and that they need to win the rebounding battle. That seems to be what Portis said to Griffin and to the players. Just play more cohesive basketball, I think, is, win on the margins, at least clean up and take care of business with the stuff that wins games a lot of the time, turnovers, rebounding, etc. And that Griffin needs to have a stronger role with play calling. And yeah, it's funny how quickly we got it, whatever. I guess it probably means that one or both of Lillard and Giannis probably agreed with the assertion from Mr. Portis, judging from how the leagues typically work. Although I think Portis has done some stuff with Chris Haynes in the past, but whatever, it doesn't really matter.
I like that you called him Mr. Portis. You're just like you gave him.
I'm respectful. Yeah, I'm respectful. Do you think he's right?
I think he is mostly right. I think is some of this about him only playing 18 minutes? Maybe.
I don't think it is. How much does he normally play? 18 minutes. I guess it says a near season low. I know that says that in the article, but it's not like he's a starter.
No, but I feel like when you're on the championship team, you probably feel like, hey, just put me out there and figure it out. Even if the three big stuff and Brooke has been amazing as of late. So I think I understand it. I think he's right, but it's also like I understand sometimes, even if I think there's some limits to it, when it's like, hey, we have Damian Lillard and Giannis, and particularly Damian Lillard, one of the best clutch operators we have in the league over the last decade. Maybe you just kind of let him figure stuff out. I kind of understand that impulse. It has worked. There's clearly limits on it. There's clearly structural problems with it. So maybe you do need to be a little more creative and add some things in, but I also just kind of understand how you get there. It just feels like part of this to me, Brennan, comes down to the fact that Adrian Griffin, as a head coach, is still just very much learning on the job. And this is all under the guise of someone who hasn't gone through this before, and that probably adds to everything that is going on here. So you don't worry about their offense?
I do worry about the offense, but it's also just has exploded. And it's getting I think the Dame pick and roll stuff is getting better. I think they're gonna just by the talent. I think ultimately will figure it out at some point. They're fourth in offense in the league right now. They're fourth over the last 2 weeks. We're at 121.5. They're 6 points above league average over the last 2 weeks. I feel like that. The numbers tell you one thing. The eye test tells you something a little bit different. So I'm not overly worried, but it's not as seamless as I think you might like. It's not as seamless and clean as you might have hoped considering the talent. Yeah, I think the Bucks are going to win 55 games, and we're not going to understand how. I think that this team is very disorganized. The rebounding stuff is absolutely an issue. They are 26th in offensive rebounding themselves, which was always a staple for Bud, and middle of the pack in terms of allowing offensive rebounds on the other end. That is obviously something that Portis would help. Bobby Portis is absolutely the guy who looks most out of sorts on both ends, and I think it might seem silly to focus on a guy who's the sixth man, but I think he's probably the fourth or fifth best player on this team, and I think offensively he was a staple because he could attack mismatches. He would stand in the dunker spot, get offensive rebounds, be an outlet on a lot of the Giannis ISOs. And defensively, whatever. We know their defense is kind of a mess. I think the personnel's a problem. I kind of need to see the roster come together before I can judge that too harshly. But focusing on Portis, focusing on what he used to do for the offense that he's no longer able to do, that gets me to what I think is the Bucks' biggest issue on the offensive end of the floor, which is I actually think that they're playing too fast. That was as I was trying to chew it over, and I wonder what you think of this because we haven't really talked about this angle of it before. Last season, they were 12th in offensive seconds per possession. This year, they're 9th. They are very clearly looking to run more often. We know Giannis is a wrecking ball downhill. I would never advocate for them to not do that when he has the space to do it. But what I looked at, Chris, is when Middleton is on the court this season, they run off of live rebounds 3% less of the time. And that's their starting lineup. Obviously his minutes have been a big story. He can't play a lot. He hasn't always been super involved. But that tells me that when their best unit is out there with the best players to start and close games, they have tried to play slower. And his presence has made it easier for them to do that. And I just don't think that they have enough playmaking to play slow and more methodically and really orchestrate something in the half court when he's not out there. And so they maybe default to playing fast. Then they make mistakes and don't have a plan B. So maybe this gets solved as he plays more. But that seems to be the key to me. Slow things down a little bit, especially late in games. Involve Middleton. Get Dame off the ball at times just to start possessions, not just go have him space. But that's where I think that they could start to figure some of this out, is just take a breath, run some stuff, use the talent you have, create mismatches, maybe crash the offensive glass a little bit more once you are set, and see if that stabilizes some things a little bit. What do you think?
I think that's right. I think that's a world where it's going to put Dame in a comfort zone. It's going to allow Middleton to do what he does best. It puts everyone in that situation that the way, like, none of their three best players really want to play super fast. Brook doesn't want to play super fast, right? Like, this team is built to be more methodical and more purposeful. I think there's obviously moments where you want to get Giannis out rolling as a freight train, but you have to be selective about it and intentional about it. And that's probably going to come from defensive stops and all of that. I mean, they could use, I think, like a good amount of, just a little sprinkling of chaos energy on the break on top of everything. I think you're correct about there. So it's I think finding the right, like, breaking up the pie chart, so to speak, in a way that is good. But they also just might not have the defense to fully catalyze transition buckets in the way you might want.
Well, and it seems like that's what Adrian Griffin might be missing here. He wants them to play defense a style that creates turnovers, but the reality is Bud didn't play that way. They were 30th in creating turnovers last year, but they're only 26th this year. The personnel just isn't there to do that, and it seems like Griffin has capitulated on the defensive end. We're not going to try to swarm everybody, although, as I mentioned with Portis, I think they still try to play that way when he's in the game, and I don't think that's what he's best at. Just switch when Bobby Portis is in the game. He's good at that. So they're not creating turnovers, but then it seems like Griffin's message is still run. But it's like, well, when you're not actually creating advantageous transition opportunities for your offense, then who really cares? And I think that they gave into the Pacers' tempo way too much. And I think looking forward to the Lakers game, the way the Lakers are going to be able to win is to take a couple seconds, well, probably like 0.2 seconds or whatever in the real average out of everything over the course of a game, off of that Pacers tempo, rather than just saying, all right, let's play fast because we're playing the Pacers. Like, no, that you can't give into that. And I think Milwaukee did that too much, but it's also a bigger picture concern for them, I think, looking forward too. So that would be what I want to see them do as Middleton gets more healthy. And he played 30 minutes on Thursday night, so hopefully he's headed there.
Should we move to Lakers-Pelicans, Brendan?
Let's do it.
So there's a guy, I don't know if you've heard of him, from Akron, Ohio. He's been in the league for 2 decades. His name's LeBron James. Seems like he still pretty good at basketball, Brendan. Seems like he's still dominant. Seems like he's still assertive. Still seems like he can do whatever he wants when he wants to. I mean, Brendan, I got to tell you, this game was not competitive for the most part. The Lakers pulled away from it. It's a 44-point win for them. I kind of thought they were going to win based on the first bucket, which was him going at Herb Jones and getting an N1. And it's like, oh, that's what we're doing here? Okay, the Pelicans have absolutely zero shot because if LeBron's doing this, if LeBron's playing like that, with that aggression, with that focus, pretty darn near impossible to beat that guy still. It's really, really hard to do it. Unbelievable performance from him. Unbelievable push from him. Still one of the best players in the world. To me, the greatest player that has ever existed. And I'm loving every little bit of him just going out there and saying, I want this. Whether it is for like the legacy reasons, which I'm sure it is, but also him giving quotes of like, I want $500,000 and playing into the fact that he is the cheapest human being that we know that exists. I just love all of this from LeBron. This is a delight to me as a big LeBron guy.
As a big LeBron guy, does it surprise you that he wants it this bad? Like, did you go into the season thinking the Lakers are going to push hard for the NBA Cup? Because it makes sense now, but I wasn't clocking that.
No, I wasn't. I thought this tournament, Brendan, from the beginning was really built more toward teams like Indiana, or I thought maybe Phoenix because Booker's a little bit younger, or the Kings, or the Cavs before they were kind of bad, or the Knicks, like a team that hasn't won a ton, that would have more motivation to chase them, to get the experience, go through this, level up from it. LeBron is like he's going to play in like 3-4 of these tournaments, like at most.
He doesn't need this, right?
He doesn't need this. And like I think listening to these people and taking them seriously is not the best thing. We're going to have people that say like, oh, like this doesn't, how he performed in this does not like really contribute to his legacy. And in a real way, I think that's stupid. I think it's going to, especially.
Really? You think it's going to? You think like when we're stacking up like his Hall of Fame accolades, the lower third graphic on NBA TV for the Hall of Fame ceremony in 5 years or 10 years or 30, whenever he decides to stop playing, is going to say 4-time NBA champion, leading scorer in the history of the NBA, 25 seasons played, and NBA Cup champion 2023.
I mean, it's going to be like the 5th or 6th thing on the resume, but it's like going to be on there. And I think it's creating more moments for him. I mean, this is one of those runs where you see just still what he's capable of at this age, and you still see what he's capable of dominating games and being the best guy on the floor, the best guy in his team, which is I think a Biggers-Laker conversation is part of a Biggers-Laker conversation to have at some point. I think we're going to hit at it a little bit today, but I think if we're redo tiers again at some point, I think what the Lakers are and what this specific team is around LeBron and where he fits and how AD fits and all of that, I think is a really interesting conversation and says something about the Lakers, but also about how good LeBron still is. It is just creating more moments for him. I mean, I'm looking at this final, Brendan, and like there's a very clear world where he goes out and has like a 50, 58, 10, and 8 game, and it's just like, oh, right, this guy just took over the whole damn thing because he's just capable of doing that, and he's been awesome this whole year. This has been like a pretty damn good LeBron season. Like, all NBA caliber.
Oh, yeah, let's just dive into the numbers. Almost the most shots at the rim as a proportion of his total since the first season he was a Laker.
Which is absurd.
Yeah.
Like
he's shooting 77% at the basket, which would be a career high if it continued. He's shooting 41% from 3, which he hasn't done since 2013. And you're just seeing how that's opening everything up. You mentioned the Herb Jones and one. The LeBron played Morey ball against the Pelicans. Yeah. He just lived at the rim and was bombing from 3. It's like he was James Harden out there, basically. And you just see how that opens up his game. Last year, he was 75% at the rim. It's not like he's any sort of walkover there, but a little bit worse. And he didn't get there as often, and he only shot 33% from deep. So you can feel disappointed or worried that the Lakers rely so much on LeBron still, but when he's playing this well, it's a fine recipe.
The Pelicans just had no answer for anything that he wanted to do. Nothing. Didn't matter who they put on him, didn't matter what schemes they tried, didn't matter what was going on. LeBron was just doing whatever he wanted and got wherever he wanted and is playing with like a spurt and of energy that is the Pelicans just didn't match. I mean, that to me in a lot of ways, Brendan, this is the story of this game. The Lakers, spearheaded by LeBron, play with energy and focus, and we're like, we want to win this. We want to take care of business. We are going to handle any comebacks you might have for little bits and hit back and be resilient and all of those things.
And then the Pelicans said, "Oh, don't worry, we actually don't have any of those. We're good.
We have a club reservation at right after this game. We'd like to make sure we get our media done so we can like get to the Spearmint Rhino or get to the casino like after this. Like we got somewhere to be. Like that was
there's some women up in the suite. Yeah, we're busy tonight. We have more important things going on.
Yeah, it sounded like they like got the based on the. I mean, this is reductive and not totally fair, but it's like you see the Ingram Zion thing the other day when they start like laughing about the celebration. You ask LeBron that question, he's just like being like, "I need to win first."
Yeah, well, and the other thing about the energy or like the effort standpoint is. That was a bad look for them now in hindsight for them to kind of giggle like that. But Zion was talking a big game before the whole knockout round started about how this is a perfect opportunity for him to come in and seize it. And the Pelicans are exactly the type of team that this was made for, and they're going to show up and this and that. And I think the Kings win was impressive. Zion didn't play well. He didn't really play well in this game either, so I don't know how much credit he can take for any of this, but this game was the opposite of impressive. Let's talk about some structural things, though, separate from the effort, which wasn't great. The Pelicans starting lineup is now minus 9.5 net rating, and the Lakers were just playing off of all their guys. Herb Jones, Jonas Valanciunas, even Ingram is not exactly some sort of lights-out, knockdown shooter. Zion doesn't even take them. Do you think there's an answer on this Pelicans roster, or is this one of the teams we should have an eye on when it comes to the trade market? Because they're getting expensive. They're not young anymore. There's pressure on everybody. They thought about blowing it up last offseason. They're good right now. I've been optimistic about them, but a performance like this is one that can be a wake-up call, I think.
I think it's probably both answers. I mean, I think eventually I would want Trey Murphy to start for this team.
Over who? Because people say that, and it's like, who are you benching?
Right, let me just look at. I need to look at it in front of me. But I think considering the assets, considering the amount of things they have and the salaries to play with, they should be a team that should look to make a trade. I mean, you could Larry Nance and some picks. What could that get you? You could, if you wanted to get real weird. Okay, CJ McCollum. Hello. Could we move you and find a better guard? Do you go get a different kind of center? Miles Turner's probably certainly not an option at this point, considering what
no
the Pacers are. But is there a certain kind of center you could go out and get that's an upgrade over Valanciunas? Is there something you could do to upgrade this team, and you have the assets to do it, and still have not blow all your flexibility in one trade now? That would feel silly,
okay. So
right?
two questions then. One, you got to pick which trade they should do. We know what the options are. And two, who are you benching for Trey Murphy?
You probably got to sit Herb. That's not totally fair to Herb, and you're certainly losing some defensive stuff there. But Trey Murphy's just a more advanced, more feared offensive player. Even if Herb Jones has had his moments and has had some really nice shooting games this year, Trey Murphy at his peak is just giving you a much more expansive offensive game that opposing defenses fear.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the only answer. Certainly got to gear him up, but I think that's the answer. I mean, I guess what are you thinking as far as a trade? I mean, would OG be a name you'd pursue? Would LaVine
I mean, I guess I
pursue?
don't necessarily think we have to pick a target, but just you laid out all the options from the Pelican standpoint of what place that they would need to upgrade. That's more what I'm asking. Because I think the biggest issue for this team is that Larry Nance is never healthy and is maybe not quite as good as you need, especially as a rebounder and defender. He's a good offensive small ball five. He's a good switch defender, but he's not your everyday answer. He's not Draymond Green, right? I mean, obviously, but that's the big problem.
Nance would make more sense if you had a different kind of center who was more of your traditional dominate the paint kind of thing. And Valanciunas has he's fine, but defensively, I think you'd want someone a little more dominant, a little more expansive. If you had just Mitchell Robinson at center instead of Valanciunas, Nance probably makes a little bit more sense on this roster. That kind of switch would make some sense to me.
As a 4 or as a backup 5?
As a backup 5, or you could sneak him in as a 4 depending on what's going on a given night.
Well, but they have Zion, and that's the problem, right?
That's the problem. Yeah.
And I think the other thing to talk about from this game is the minutes in the second quarter when they went to Zion at the 5, they looked like a junior high team in terms of size. It looked like a bunch of 5'3" kids playing against the Lakers. Jackson Hayes is bullying everybody. He's not even that great of a player. Maybe he had some sort of revenge in his mind about, this matchup having come from New Orleans, but Zion at the 5 is becoming Ben Simmons at the 5. You can talk about it and have fun and imagine it in your head. It is not an option. It is not a realistic thing that you can ever play if you're going to win basketball games, period. Unless Zion gets way, way, way better on defense than he ever has been in his life, even including Duke. He never even really played center. He's never been able to do it. It's not going to happen unless he gets better, and so we can stop talking about it. So if that's the case, then you have to approach it with that in mind. He's going to play the 4. He's not going to help you defensively. He's not going to shoot threes. So what do you do from there? I think, to me, the Valanciunas upgrade is the one that I look at. But every team wants a freaking center. Could they get Isaiah Hartenstein from the Knicks? Maybe, but I think everybody would like that, and the Knicks want to win games. There's just not a lot of upgrades on Valanciunas. That is kind of the fringe center kind of like the, what is it, the Wandy Rodriguez line that Matthew Berry used to put for fantasy baseball. Like, it's like that. Who do you get that's actually going to be better? I don't know the answer, but to me, with the Zion at center stuff not working, Nance never being healthy, and the starting lineup being bad, you can't just keep slamming against the glass like a bumblebee trying to get inside and hope that it works. Like, you got to do something else. So we'll see.
I think also a different kind, like, this is also hard to find, and like Levine isn't the one I would really want, but I could see being like, okay, CJ, you got us to a certain point, you're a solid guy, we like your leadership, but talent wise, age wise, maybe you have to explore that. But I don't think there's an obvious trade there either. They would have one other name that isn't really available now, that Brennan, that might have been interesting to me for them just from like a spacing standpoint, but this team's like the best team in the West record wise right now, is Cat. I don't know if I totally love that from like a defensive standpoint, but talent play, the spacing would, I think, do them a lot of good. I would have looked at that if I were them, but that doesn't really seem like a thing.
Yeah, if they're not going to get a shooting center, then at the very least a playmaking center who can play defense, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is the next best
So Mason
thing.
Plumlee, got it.
Yeah, Mason. But seriously, a player similar to Mason Plumlee would be what I'm targeting, at least as a balance or another option aside from Valanciunas. But I think this game to me was a real eye-opener for what's going to happen in New Orleans in the playoffs. And their front office, with all the pressure we talked about, has to be realistic about this. And, nobody's getting younger or cheaper on this roster. Trey Murphy's extension is coming. CJ is what CJ is. The young guys have looked better together. They've actually played together, but do they fit? What does it look like? Like, you got to answer those questions, and you have to force something if it's not working.
100%. Do you want to? Should we move on to final predictions preview here?
You're the boss.
Pacers.
Let's do it.
Well, all right, Lakers Pacers. I'm going to pull up odds as we get started here. But Brendan, to me, I think this starts. There's one big question for both teams, and I think it's both about how both teams defend the most important play in the other team. For the Pacers, no idea how they're really going to build a LeBron game plan. That's going to be a huge problem for them. On the flip side, I think the Lakers are going to have some real trouble finding a consistent path to defend Haliburton and play at the pace. And I think this game's going to come down to those two individual defensive battles, and then who wins the pace battle. The Pacers are going to want to be out in transition and get this going and wear the Lakers out and give them problems when the Lakers want to play a little bit bigger. For the Lakers, best thing you can do is grind this game out a little bit. LeBron just eats up the Pacers, and we see where that goes. I will say one small thing about this that I do like is that LeBron has a long history with the Pacers, like as a team he's played against, and obviously the Miami run. But one of his most tense playoff series was 2018 first round against Indiana. Like this is LeBron. LeBron has had now like multiple iterations against very different kinds of Pacers teams over very different stops of his career. So that's just also kind of a cool little historical footnote.
And the Carlisle history.
And the Carlisle history, right? It's a great shot on your part. So the fact that this is just layering in more LeBron lore is great for me. Betting odds: Lakers -3.5, and the spread over under is set at 240.5. Money line: Pacers +150, the Lakers -185. The Lakers are favorites. I suspect this will feel like a Lakers home game to some degree, being in Las Vegas. Where does your brain go with this? What is it? The Pacers defending LeBron? Is it how the Lakers defend Haliburton? Is it the pace, or is it something else? What is popping to you as you think about this game?
The Lakers are middle of the pack in transition defense. I think LeBron has exerted a little bit more defensive effort. That's been part of the other thing he's done to try to win these games. There was that cool clip that went viral of him and AD talking about their defensive strategy the other night, which was fun to watch. So I do believe the Lakers can throw enough different types of bodies at Haliburton. I think Reddish will start the game that way. I kind of doubt we see a lot of D'Angelo Russell in this game, or at least as far as impact goes, because what does he do defensively? The Pacers are going to put him in hell. So you're going to see the big, long lineups for the Lakers where they try to force mistakes, slow possessions down, switch, do what they need to do. I believe that they can have the best game defending the Pacers that we've seen in this NBA Cup, and probably one of the better ones all season. The Jackson Frank over at Basketball Insiders, I think is where he's writing now, wrote about how the Magic defended the Pacers, and a lot of it was fighting through screens with big guard defenders, clogging the paint, whatever. I think the Lakers can kind of match that formula. The thing that I think might also kind of help determine this one, though, Chris, is offensive rebounding, because it's something that the Lakers have done in both of these NBA Cup games that they just didn't do and that they haven't done in the regular season much. And the Pacers are fine in terms of defensive rebounding, but no, they're actually bottom 4. I had that wrong. They're bottom 4 in terms of defensive rebounding. So if AD can make an impact there, I think that'll be huge. And in terms of guarding LeBron, in terms of keeping them off the offensive glass and keeping AD out from the paint, they have to stop giving up the switches to allow Miles Turner to be out on an island. Like, that is the number one thing watching the Pacers that drives me absolutely crazy, is how easily in transition on cross matches and in pick and roll situations on switches that they just let Miles Turner end up defending a floor spacer a mile away from anything going on. And so I think that they need to keep that from happening in order to defend LeBron drives, keep AD off the glass, and all the rest. If they can do that, I feel a little better. I think Nesmith will have a big role to play against LeBron. But on both ends, that's kind of the things that I see impacting this one. Who do you think steps up of those role players that we've listed off the names of so far, but which one of them do you think is going to matter the most on Saturday night, on either end?
I think for Indiana, it has to be Nesmith again. I mean, I think he's going to get the LeBron assignment, right? Like, he's going to be asked to be the guy that defends LeBron and has to be physical and do his damnedest to slow him down. And I don't like his odds.
Would you start Nesmith? Would you just say this is a playoff game, let's do it, or does Bruce Brown get the shot at the beginning and then they go to Nesmith after that?
Yeah, it's probably that, but Nesmith has been more effective in that role. So his impact you felt much more than Bruce Brown. So I kind of just want to see more of him. I think he's kind of earned the spot. I think you kind of ride a guy in that situation. So I think it's him.
How quickly does Obi Toppin get his second foul if he guards LeBron? Because I think Bruce Brown's a better guard defender. So it might actually be Toppin. Yeah, I think he's gonna foul LeBron twice in the first 2 possessions.
Can I tell you what LeBron is doing if Obi Toppin's fucking defending him? He's cooking. He is. Yeah. He's getting an ISO, and he's driving in, and he's doing the little shoulder LeBron chug. He's flexing, and he's getting 2-and-1s, and Obi Toppin's sitting his ass down on the bench. That's what's happening.
If he did it to Herb Jones, I'm sorry, Obi. It's not
cooked.
Your night.
You're cooked. He did it to Herb. He's doing it to he's going to do it to Nesmith too. That's the thing. Yeah. That's what I keep thinking about. Yeah. Like, LeBron, there is not a single soul on this Pacers team that has a shot of defending LeBron if he plays like he did the other night.
No, you're at the point with Indiana where, and this means that the Lakers have already won. I mean, not literally the game, but they've won metaphorically. When you're like, the best LeBron defender might just be the center. Put Miles on him. Like, that's where some teams end up getting, and it's similar with Giannis. And if that's the case, then you're already screwed.
Yeah, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed if that's the case. Your whole defensive structure is compromised if that's the case.
Yeah.
Like that, then you're allowing like AD to maybe get an offensive rebounding rhythm, for their shooters to be in good spots. Like, you're kind of screwed.
One thing I will say though about the Lakers offensively, because it seems like we're both kind of leaning that they might win this thing. They did get enormously lucky on threes in the Pelicans game. Not just LeBron, but Taurean Prince was 5 of 8, and Reeves will make his, Russell will make his, but I think the Prince thing especially was an outlier, and I almost like, it's hard to call that luck when it's LeBron, because it's LeBron, and he creates amazing shots for teammates. He's been doing it for 2 decades. But if that dissipates a little bit, I do think Indiana's shooting talent is better. So you could see a game where the Pacers make 15 threes and the Lakers make 7, and then that's a pretty difficult deficit to overcome, even if they do get some offensive rebounds and force Indiana into a little bit more turnovers. But it feels like a game where like 55 times out of 100, the Lakers probably win it. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah, I mean, this is there for them. As good Indiana is, and I think there's clear ways Indiana could win it, and it would be a really cool story if they do. I think there's more paths for the Lakers, and it's because of LeBron. It just is.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Lakers role guy, though, that I think is my big X factor is Reeves. Because I think he's going to need to defend Haliburton at times, and I think his shot making is going to it's obviously one of the big swings of this Lakers season, but like he's kind of like, if you're going to limit D'Lo, and you should, even though he's had some moments where he makes good shots and is making smart passes, you're asking to give Haliburton a lot of rhythm. I think their best option to figure out the Haliburton thing is to probably just have Reeves defend him at times, or maybe it's Taurean Prince at times. Like, I think you're going to have to
Reddish. That's what my X factor would be on the Lakers side, because if we saw anything from, well, first of all, he's starting, so I mean,
he's been
Reeves
better
isn't.
He's been better than I thought too, if I'm being honest. Like, I think he's been like a little more like useful than I would have expected. I don't know if I want to call him good, but I think Reddish has been less of like a flop than I would have thought, because I just didn't think he was very good before this.
He's getting out of his own way. Right, like
he's in the prestige zone. Sure, yeah.
He's playing role player basketball for the first time in his career, which I think is probably his destiny, and it maybe always was. I mean, this is a guy where it's like since basically high school was the last time that it felt like he could be a star, and I'm not saying that with any sort of disrespect. Dude's going to make a lot of money in the NBA. He can be in the league for a long time, but this is what he should be playing like as a 3-and-D player. But the reason that I say him is, one, he'll probably start the game defending Haliburton, so setting that tempo early and throughout the game will be important. But if it's anything like how they approached Booker, Reddish is going to be, to throw back to another LeBron-era Pacers duel with Miami, Reddish is the guard Joel Anthony in this game. And by that I mean the dude is a walking 6 fouls. He is an opportunity to hammer the absolute shit out of Tyrese Haliburton and piss Tyrese Haliburton off, which is also something we have not seen anybody really do. But I bet you, with Darvin Ham as a head coach and LeBron wanting this so badly and the Lakers playing desperate, I don't think he's going to do anything dirty, although Suns fans might tell you he did a little bit on that in that Tuesday night game. He's going to be physical as hell with Tyrese Haliburton. And so for that, if he can make a few threes on top of it, I think Reddish will be pretty important here.
100%. So let's make some picks, Brendan. I think it's time for picks. I am going to pick the Lakers. I would have, if we had finished, I tried to do this the other day, and you rightly said, don't fill out the whole bracket, tease. I was going to pick the Lakers to win the whole thing then. I think this is...
Would you have picked the Lakers if it was the Bucks too? Would it have mattered?
No, I was picking the Lakers regardless. I'm just Dylan, our producer for YouTube. This is for you, my bud. This is LeBron. I mean, I'm just not picking against LeBron, as simple as that is, and kind of against how I usually like to analyze things. I'm usually a little less like, well, the best guy, and I think the best player ever is on one team. I'm going to pick that one. I'm doing that here because the Pacers just don't have the ability to defend him and stay in front of him, or if they put Miles Turner on him, they're changing their defensive structure, and when that happens. Like, even if you throw 2-3 bodies on him in the paint and say, pass, they have enough shooting, I think, particularly how Taurean Prince is playing of late. And if you just give guys open shots, they're probably going to stick some of them. Like, it wouldn't shock me even if D'Lo struggles defensively, but LeBron gives him, like, 3, 4, 5 open threes, and he hits 3 of them, and it's like, oh, that swung the game to some degree at key spots. Like, that is what the power of LeBron is that he can be so good and so overwhelming that it helps mask other issues you might have. That is part of the genius of what LeBron is. And I just don't think Indiana has any shot of slowing him down. I think Haliburton's also probably going to go off and play great. I just think he's playing at that level right now. But the way LeBron's playing right now, I think he's just going to dominate this game. I think that's going to set everything else up for them. And I like the Lakers, and I probably like them at more than 3.5. I like them to cover that money line.
Okay, so one last note on the Pacers to your point about defending LeBron that I didn't include. They foul more than anybody in the league by a mile. The only teams in the vicinity of them in terms of fouling as a defense are Detroit, Houston, and San Antonio. Two of those teams are awful. One of them is also very young. So the Pacers are going to get into foul trouble. They are not going to be disciplined enough to contest. They also aren't going to get calls. Like, you telling me Aaron Nesmith's going to get calls against LeBron James? Absolutely not. So
he wasn't getting calls against the Bucks.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you're right. I'll pick the Lakers as well. The last question that I have for you, though, is does it go over or under? You said it was 240?
Yeah, 240.5.
Yeah, what do you think? I think it could go over.
It's tight. I think it's tight. I would lean
It's a
a
good
little
line.
bit under. I would lean. They know what they're doing over there in Las Vegas.
I mean, the Lakers scored 133 against the Pelicans in a game that was over for this whole second half, basically, and they didn't even have really a reason to do anything. They still scored 43 in the third quarter, so they can put up points if they do get hot again and get some offensive rebounds.
Yeah, the offensive rebounding part of this, I think, I can't wait to look at what the numbers are for that. Just like how bonkers they could be in the Lakers' favor. Would it shock you if this is like a sneaky big AD game in some way? If he has 28 and 15, wouldn't shock me if that happens.
No, I mean the Pacers have no size, so you run an AD pick and roll with LeBron. What happens? They switch it, and then AD's being guarded by Obi Toppin or something. Bruce Brown, TJ McConnell, sure.
TJ McConnell sliding into the dunker spot. TJ McConnell, by the way, showing up, giving them good minutes. It's funny that we 2 months ago, Brendan, could have looked at the Pacers and thought, oh, they're going to trade McConnell and Hield. And I don't know if I want them to trade either of those guys.
They should still trade McConnell because I think they can get something good for it. We had a Zion defense conversation. There's a Buddy Hield defensive conversation for another day. Not quite the same stature as a former number one overall pick, but
not at all.
Boy, is it brutal.
Yeah, he might be if the Lakers are game planning and they're saying, okay, who do we want to force switches with so LeBron can bulldoze them? Buddy Hield's pretty high up on that target list.
He's number one, and there is no number two. I think Aaron Nesmith is six.
Haliburton's going to get put into the blender a little bit, I think, in this game, and it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun for him. He's going to get
strength is not what Tyrese Haliburton is necessarily built around as far as his play style. Aaron Nesmith is only listed as 1 inch taller than Buddy Hield, and I swear it's 6 inches. Buddy Hield is the type of player who looks substantially shorter than he is because he is so ground bound at all times. It's brutal, but he's had a fun season. No, they should not trade Buddy, I don't think, but I think they could trade McConnell. Either way, they've both been productive. I think this game can be close, but I probably would agree that the Lakers cover.
Yeah. Can I give you one Haliburton last note to just kind of end on the positive? I was just flipping through Mark Stein's newsletter to see if there was any tidbits, but he had this note about Haliburton from Basketball Reference. Brendan, it's a trivia question. I'm going to ask this as a trivia question. Haliburton this season has already had 3 games of at least 25 points and 15 assists without a single turnover. So 25 and 15, no turnovers. He's done that this season. Only 4 other active players have ever done that. I'm not going to ask you to name all 4. Can you give me 2 of the 4? And I'll tell you the other ones if you don't get them.
Chris Paul.
Okay, got 1.
Probably LeBron.
Yep. Okay, so let's see if you can get the other 2.
Active players.
Active players.
Draymond?
No. You're missing the easiest one. The one.
Give it to me. Just give him to me. Russell Westbrook.
Nikola Jokic.
Okay, Jokic. Duh. Yeah.
And big Jim Harden.
Yeah. Harden was going to be next after Westbrook, but okay. That's a good list. That's good company. You mentioned the thing at the beginning of the historical guys of total games with 15 assists and 0 turnovers. It's like John Stockton, Steve Nash, Chris Paul, and Muggsy Bogues. It's okay. He's already on that list. He's been playing in the NBA for 4 years. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Incredible. He's incredible. I think them losing Saturday does not take away from what they've done here, to be clear.
No. If anything, it helps it because they got these big games and they showed themselves, hey, look what happens when we play some defense.
Can't wait for this. I'm so excited.
Should be fun.
How would you rate the in-season tournament so far, Brandon? Scale 1 to 10. I'm at an 8.5.
We got to do our postmortem next week, but I'll give it a 10. I mean, I think it's been awesome. I have no notes. I mean, we have some notes, but nothing that I hated about it, just stuff that could be even better.
Let's fix the courts, you nerds. All right, let's end there. I am Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. This has been our reaction to NBA Cup semifinals. Our preview of the finals will be back Sunday. We're gonna get the audio. At least will be up late Sunday evening to recap Saturday's game, to talk about the WNBA draft lottery, aka the day where we find out if Caitlin Clark is maybe going to stay in college for another year or not. So we'll talk to you guys.
Nah, she's coming
then.
to Phoenix.
Just watching, Brendan, got to tell you, would love that for you.
If that happens, Sunday's pod is going to be unhinged. If they win the lottery, I'm preparing you now.
Would that make up for the despair you feel, I think, like once a week about Jalen Smith going 2 picks ahead of Tyrese Haliburton?
It would come close. Okay. Getting to root for Caitlin Clark for the next 15 years sounds like a thrill, so I'm ready.
Yeah, I would personally love that for you. Talk to y'all Sunday. We'll see if Brendan is delirious with joy or not. Enjoy your weekend.